Hello, I hope this video finds you well. This is night 17 of my nightly recording of a Codingbat solution while schools are closed. Tonight we're going to look at array count 9 from warm-up 2, and this video is looking at the Python solution. So in this sequence of videos, this is the first time we've really got to look at how to use a loop to go through a list. We've done it with strings, and now we're going to look at a list. So it says array count, but you'll hear me refer to this as a list, because often in Python they're referred to as that. Okay, so given an array of ints, return the number of 9s in the array. So we have array count 9, and we see 1, 2, 9, and we get 1. And we can look and we can say, oh yeah, there's 1 9 there. If we have 1, 9, 9, we have an array, we have 2 9s. There they are. And if I have 1, 9, 9, 3, 9, we obviously have 3 9s. 1, 2, 3. So if you remember when I was talking about strings, one of the things I said is that often I'll say count the number of e's, and someone will look at it and say 4. Whatever it is. And I say, okay, now imagine that the string is 1,000,000 letters long. How would you do that? And you have to point at each of the letters and say, are you an E or not? Are you an E? Are you an E? The same idea applies to lists. Lists have a length and they have a set of indexes. So this list has a length of 3, and that's indexes 0, 1, 2. And so in this case, if I want to count the number of 9s, in these 3 examples, I can just look at it really quickly and give you an answer. But imagine there's 1,000,000 elements. We would have to point at each one and then say, are you a 9? Yes or no, or true or false. Are you a 9? And that's what we're going to do here. And so the big idea in this question is looping through an array and inspecting every element. And I'm going to put array/lists. This is not the place to kind of get into a technical difference between arrays and lists, but in Python, this would be a list. And what we require here is a for loop with an if statement. And let's go through to make sure you understand why that is. So if we take the first example here, nums is equivalent to 1, 2, 9. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, nums at 0, is that equivalent to 9? And nums at 0 is 1, and I say, is 1 equivalent to 9? And that's false. And I say nums at 1 is equivalent to 9, which means it's 2 equivalent to 9, and that's false. And then nums at 2 is equivalent to 9. So that's saying is 9 equivalent to 9, and that's true. And therefore we increment our CTR by 1. And to make sure you understand, this is my list, and this is index 0, 1, 2. So I have to look at, if we look here, you can see I'm counting systematically 0 through the length minus 1, which is a loop to go through every index. So I'm just going to say for I in range, and it's exactly like strings, 0, comma, len, bracket, nums, comma 1. And now what do I do in here? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an if statement. I'm going to say, well, what do we do here? We said, essentially, if nums at I is equivalent to 9. So I'm going to say if nums at I is equivalent to 9. Well, in that case, I'm going to have to keep track of that. So I'm going to add 1 to some counter, which I don't have. So I'm going to say CTR is 0. And I say CTR is equal to CTR plus 1. And I then finish the loop and return CTR. So now when I hit go, there it is. Now, of course, there's a way to do this in a really short one line of code. And someone will always point this out. Before I do that, I really want to stress, it's so important you know how to write a loop to go through a list of elements. So important. It's going to make a lot of more advanced coding a lot easier. But that said, we always want to highlight these functions because they're good to have in your back pocket. And so what we have is we have an instance method called count. And the way we call an instance method is, I'm going to make a variable called CTR again. And an instance method is always invoked with an object. In this case, I'm invoking it using the list nums. And so I'm going to say nums, which is my instance.count. And the parameter I pass to it is what I want to count. And I want to count the number of times I see the number 9. And so what this will do is it will take the list nums, and it will count how many 9s it sees. And then all I have to do is return CTR. And that's it. And of course I can make that even simpler simply by writing that as a return statement. Is this a nice approach? Yes. Is it great to know? Totally. In terms of long-term development, understanding how to use this loop structure with an if statement inside is really important. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Have a great day.